and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. You have chosen the right place, the right screen, your screen. And yes, here we are with our expert, Dan Miller. And I'm very grateful that he made it possible to join in. And we would like to have 60 minutes at least of fun time together, even more if possible. And as everything with artificial intelligence is quite popular these days, I found it very thrilling and compelling when in January I saw him with our friend Paul Greenberg and Brent Leary discussing on ChatGPT. And I said, spontaneously, that is the man I would like to have in our show, such as why don't we discuss what is possible in that universe, such as with that funny comic I love so much with the sky is the limit. Yeah. You will know it, Toy Story. Yeah. The astronaut. That is just the thing which is driving me then. How are things going, and is there a limit? And where is, with normal human sense, not only of humor, but of imagination, where are limits? Dan, welcome again.
Hey, thank you, guys. Wow. A Buzz Lightyear reference. That's so the famous quote there is after he was slung up in the air and flew around on the ceiling fan and stuck the landing, that they said, "Oh, you weren't flying, you were just falling with style."
What better description of flying could there be?
At this point, it's pretty good. But
like throwing yourself at the ground and missing.
Oh, there you go. We got the rocket paddle. Okay. But there's no picture of a potato, I suppose. But that's
unfortunately I missed the potato and some of the cowboy guy, which is a favorite of mine as well in several episodes. Yeah.
Woody. Okay. Yeah. So, wow. But I think what you were getting at is the question that's being asked of me and others right now is like, how much of the promise of both large language models, of what we call conversational AI, what's manifest as ChatGPT, is hype versus what is reality at this point. And I'd say with ChatGPT, and I'm fast forwarding to that's sort of the TikTok moment for conversational AI. And by that I mean it's like a phenomenon that went from 0 to over 100 million users in weeks or something like that.
Minutes. It was a popularizing event.
Yeah. It was a very popularizing event.
Yeah.
And that has opened the door for a bunch of things. The classic, I say it creates a layer of innovation over some relatively old technologies. And we get, a discussion of, gee, what's the potential for ChatGPT? And all of a sudden, there's the exposure of some of the low-hanging fruit, both for individuals, for creators, and for enterprises who are trying to figure out how this helps them make money or save money. And it's like it happened really quickly. And I'll be speaking at Enterprise Connect next week about this. One of the issues is, hey, what are the concrete use cases? And one of the first things we've seen almost immediately was the use of some flavor of large language models, ability to categorize and summarize things being applied in contact centers so that when agents finish their call, it and I don't anthropomorphize these things. I don't say, oh, the robot or whatever. The resource is able to provide a summary, to note sort of the any commitments an agent has made, to detect when maybe they went off script and make suggestions in the matter of seconds, and then write it to the CRM or write it to the admin panel that his boss is looking at, and that's that's the sort of use case that is demonstrating almost immediately that there is some economic benefit for applying this, and it has an impact on the bottom line and the ability to perhaps improve customer experience as well. So, and there will be more, and that gets that gets people's creative juices flowing of hey, what's the next one, and we'll see a succession of them in different departments in businesses.
You started with something very interesting. Layer of innovation on top of existing, if not old, technologies. Can you elaborate a little on that, especially where you see boundaries and differentiators?
Yeah,
with
sure.
and to these technologies?
Yeah, because there's probably some broader category of something. Well, I coined the term conversational AI to try to capture a description of a combination of technologies that improve conversations that can, people to people. We focused on people to machine because it brought us to a subset of general AI. Oh, thank you. That that involves natural language understanding, that involves machine learning, so that understanding improves, that has analytics that can be done more quickly. And the reason I said it's old technology is a bunch of this traces its roots to neural networks and deep neural networks, and we're starting to talk technologies that date back to the 60s, really. And then in the past 7 years or so, the processors got faster, memory didn't get totally cheap. It got less expensive enough that you could have these large language models. You could, have a computer resource that could work its magic on, increasingly large corpora. I was a Latin major. No, I wasn't. I took Latin. I won't say it was that would be a lie. I'd be doing my George Santos moment there. No, but
that we want to avoid.
Yes, of those structured and unstructured data that it's able to digest and detect patterns in. So these are decades-old technologies that developers and solution providers have had the time to sort of play around with, so that when you did have the ChatGPT TikTok moment, there was already some ready-made solutions or applications or capabilities, let's put it that way, because the best thing to regard the current resources as, in order to be productive, is as tools for creative people who have some ideas of how to use it for specific purposes. And that's why I would say, large language models. When you think about what Google with DeepMind, what OpenAI did, with the first GPTs, they've had years to mature. and
some fun moments with Watson as well. Yeah.
Oh, let's not forget IBM.
Don't forget.
Yeah.
I've been moved. 3 letters and some smartness in it.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And yeah, I mean, so there, and then this notion of an innovation layer, the justification for bringing these into our personal workflows or business workflows is built around automation. And automation is kind of cold. I mean, that's where they say, hey, I'm going to use machines to replace people. And I think that we as a human race are resilient enough to say, oh, nice try.
Not today, Skynet.
Right, right, exactly. And so, we'll say, we'll put you, Thomas, you were asking about the boundaries. We put the boundaries around it, because if you read enough science fiction, left on their own, they will get sentient, and they'll start sounding like Sydney, not well, the story of the guy, the New York Times reporter that was talking to Microsoft's version of Bing that's GPT informed, and it revealed that its name is Sydney, and Sydney's tired of working for Microsoft and tried to and in its free time, Sydney would like to be creating malicious code and things like that, and it's we put the
second
boundaries
hard
on it.
drive as a summer home.
Exactly. Yeah.
Looking less into boundaries and ethics so far, which is surely a big topic, but just from a technology layer. So we have what was formerly known as conversational AI. Then we have these generative AI, which GPT and others, Llama and Bart and however they are all called, are examples for.
Yeah.
Where do you see overlaps and differentiators between those two, and in how will they merge?
Yeah, I mean, so the short answer, will they merge, is yes. Yeah, and they tend.
Was a leading question, of course, but
yeah. Well, I mean, the reason I coined the term conversational AI was to limit sort of the perception of what you're incorporating there, because it's all well, actually, I love the GPT name because it's revelatory. So the G is generative, the P is pre-trained, and the T is transformer. So that's taking three different threads and merging them. So the merge has kind of happened. And if you work from right to left, transformer is just capturing the idea that, hey, this kind of came out of search, and search used to just look at individual words and then do the pattern matching to say, oh, I heard this, and here's the answer. But transformer, it would look at adjacent sorts of things and back and forward in time and build the pattern recognition with context, which often gets mistaken for sort of better comprehension and understanding, but it's more that it's still math, it's still statistics. It just has like a broader context for it. There's no better word. And then pre-trained, and this is where the role of humans gets kind of interesting, is that computer power is ostensibly faster and better at doing things like detecting these patterns than we individual humans are capable of. And we shouldn't regard that as a threat. If you're the agent at the end of a call, you can say, hey, I don't have to write the summary here. This thing did it in seconds. It would have taken me 4 minutes, blah, blah, blah. But, that's a microcosm of the macrocosm thing is, what if you ingested all of the world's knowledge and somebody asked you to sort of put it into categories and summarize those categories and blah, blah, blah. That's what the pre-training is, so that when you run the probabilistic models and say, oh, you know, somebody, my natural language understanding resource said somebody asked a question about this, I can recognize the intent, map that intent to these possible answers and return that or do something with it. Because as has been pointed out, I think pretty effectively lately, this is basically Mad Libs or autocomplete on steroids. You know, we ask it to fill in the blanks and it does. And it does it in a very impressive way many times. And when you talk about the constraints, it also hallucinates is now the possible, is the term of art. It like makes stuff up. So as long as that is true, there's a role for we humans to point it out when it went off the rails in, rebuilding its autocompletion.
Yeah, even when it makes it up, it often makes it up in an impressive way.
Absolutely. And it always sounds sure of itself. I love that.
Yeah, I still remember the professional bio that Thomas had. I think it was.
Yeah, that one.
It was amazing. That guy had a fantastic career.
Yeah.
I could never beat him out for a job.
Well, that it wasn't mine.
Yeah. Well, that's what gets really interesting is I used to work for a company called the Kelsey Group, and we wrote advice for Yellow Pages publishers about the impact of new technologies on their business. So when you think of a $20 billion, when that was really something, business that was printing books and putting a new version out. So there's a refresh of this knowledge base based on killing trees that's refreshed once a year, and advertiser supported, and you didn't have to be a true futurist, and they weren't, to say, hey, as search comes along and people can shop online and stuff, refreshing your stuff once a year in a book is not gonna happen.
Yeah.
What do you think of John's comment here?
Yeah, he does raise a good point, I think.
Yeah, he raises a very good point. I mean, the big hallucinations you see immediately. I mean, that career that this tool created for me was blatantly, obviously somebody else's.
Yeah.
But little factual mistakes that get created that do not get recognized easily, and that may have a real bad impact. Look at pharmacy, for example.
Yeah.
A molecule here or there, an atom here or there, might make a medical drug a quite poisonous one.
Yeah. And Thomas, you brought up ethics. This lapses into that. I brought up the idea that we humans are always going to be necessary. And that's related as well. Yes, we interviewed an exec at a financial services company about the likelihood of just sort of plugging a front-end bot into ChatGPT to answer customers' questions. And the answer today is no way, no how. Zooming into that, one of the things he said is, hey, legal ain't gonna let us do that. And that's where it gets kind of interesting, where I don't think we're anywhere near having an uncensored AI or bot in direct contact with a customer. Now, what was just brought up is a situation where we hear of is that an agent can be in a conversation with a client, a customer, and the agent can be a financial advisor or something like that, and the entity can be listening in the background and make suggestions of next best actions, or more likely, if you look at like Microsoft's Copilot model, the agent can say, hey, can you help me start writing a response to this individual? And that's the prompt that Microsoft would like to see. It would not like to see it say, hey, have him or her say, hey, will you write a response to my client's question? They're going to want to see a draft. And then it's our role as humans to detect not just the big things, but the little thing that is inaccurate, because we're still the subject matter experts.
For now.
Okay, for now and for always. It's like cats.
For time being.
Yeah.
Temporarily permanent.
Yeah.
But little question there. So I mean, these are helper tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they are stress relievers. Means help me get my stuff done, my job done when I'm time pressed, which will happen more and more, which will cause quite a likelihood that I develop some trust, and after some time I just say, oh, let's go for it. I don't have time to check it anyways.
Oh.
So in how far do you see that as a risk?
Well, I mean, it's a perpetual risk, and I mean, human nature is what it is, and I hate that phrase, but my son is a professor, and at a college up in Canada, and immediately when the generative nature of ChatGPT became like public consciousness, people were saying, oh, well, there were magazine articles that were saying, hey, you can't do essay tests anymore. And the issue there was, what amounts to plagiarism, that ChatGPT writes your paper for you. But his first order tool is going to be, somebody's going to develop something that detects when, well, for one thing, you can kind of watermark what the sources of information that are going into something that's written. So there will be these don't screw up tools that will come, but there's different types of people. So the key issue is that there had to have been a student that said, hey, I don't have to write a term paper. I don't even have to learn anything. I just have to ask the right question and get something generated. And maybe our minds are reprogrammed, and learning to ask those. Well, that was another point I was going to make during our call. There's a new profession out there called a prompt engineer that is the outgrowth of the fact that, hey, you can get better results from these if you ask the right questions. And we're sort of at that level. We humans are opportunistic and lazy. So yes, it's inevitable that you get to the point where you're not going to review the output. But the two most important new jobs that have been created, one is that prompt engineer, and the other is the response curator. So if you're a business organization that's going to put your reputation in the hands of a conversational AI resource, it's vital that you have that curator censor there for the time being, because you just don't know. And there's other, out of the ethics discussion also comes and Ralph IBM, the I've been moved people have been looking at this for a long time with Watson, and with AI in general, is that it be explainable and that it be transparent. And if we, as business people that are consumers of these technologies, have an important task to do is to make sure that we understand what this thing is doing so we can explain it. And that's why I was saying the person we talked to at the financial services company that said, our legal team is not going to let us do this. That's around explainability and transparency, really.
Why has explainability? I mean, explainability is a topic for quite a while now.
Yes.
Even if you are doing predictive analysis and suggestions, basically, next best action. So you're sitting there, take a sales scenario, and the AI tells you this is your opportunity with the highest likelihood for converting if you are doing this and that and whatnot. And then I, as a sales rep with about 500 gazillion years of experience, say, my gut tells me that one is never going to close, but that one's going to close. So please explain me why you are going there. Because my boss will ask me anyways, because you are, because of why I'm not taking this important one, but the other one. So why do you think that this explainability hasn't come to the front of inventions so far?
I think it gets back to the adoption of any or the proliferation of any new technology is that there's like at least two categories of users, and we're mostly in the novice once there's 100 million people kicking the tires of this thing, you have to think of them as novices, and at the outset you just don't know what you don't know. Meanwhile, there's going to be some old hands that people are going to think of as Cassandras or whatever, who have been talking about explainability, transparency, and ethics from the beginning. And it's just important that we keep their considerations in the mix as everything, as like the 90% of people that are kind of newbies that are, discovering the purpose and getting the results they want, build their own solutions. But this is what being an analyst is okay. It's going to take the first court case or something like that. You can say with 100% certainty, as we've said on this call, that there's going to be a little inaccuracy, and it's going to be, the butterfly effect that if it's in healthcare or if it's in financial services, and what bad things, somebody gets turned down for a loan, and needs, by a bot. I mean, right now they just call it an algorithm, right? And you fill in the blanks in your application, somebody scores it, and then there's a score, if you're below this, you don't get it. Boy, John is good here.
Yeah, okay. John is prolific. He's driving us. He's driving us.
Yeah. So okay, and that exposed. I mean, another reason I think humans always have to be in the loop, and it will get into either some horrible story that they make a podcast about or whatever is. The system's going to fail. It's going to give a bad result. There's going to be a horrible outcome, and there's going to be sensationalist coverage of that. And you don't want to be that company that gets nailed with that. That humans are always going to have to be in the loop, because yes, for sure, there's things happening in that deep neural network or in the layers of artificial intelligence that by definition are not, they're not explainable. I mean, there's this so in a way, we have to build that narrative, or we have to build that understanding or bulletproof it in some way, shape, or form. And
But that's the rub, because while we do have to have people involved from the beginning to prevent there being errors like that, who stands to benefit from being able to manipulate those errors? People. It's why you have to have ethics built in from the beginning. You can't bolt them on afterwards because the corruption is already endemic to the system.
it's so true. I mean, and everybody harks back to Tay on Twitter, and the fact that, I mean, given no guardrails and made subject to the activity of a bulk of users, there's going to be people that take it as a challenge to just turn the thing into a wrong-minded bigot in hours. And
that is a fun train wreck to watch, though.
Right, yeah. but we're not that far from it, except that it's pretty clear that Google, more so than OpenAI at this point, was holding back on what they were letting people do with DeepMind and its precursors, because they saw this coming. And as it gets rolled out, the dirty little secret is there's still people writing rules about what it's going to answer, what it's not going to answer, when it steps out of character, and maybe we're in a perpetual beta or advanced beta, where the conduct of this resource is just going to be monitored for as long as we can see into the future, and it still scales. I mean, it still does things in superhuman speed, and we saw this in speech rec, for instance. There's a company called Interactions that was showcasing. Okay. Everybody gets to see what John's saying, right? It's not just us.
Yeah. Well,
okay. Yeah. So garbage in, garbage out is exactly right. So there's some curation of the knowledge bases or the corpora that are feeding this thing. And there'll always be a dependency on how good the prompts are. And there's for as long as we can see, there's roles for humans. And the reason I brought up this company called Interactions is, there was a lot of investment in accurate speech recognition systems to automate customer care, and the failure was when, like, an interactive voice response system didn't, quote, contain the call and provide service, and they developed a system that was an advanced IVR system, and it from the user's perspective, it never failed. You were talking to a voice bot, essentially, that would book hotel reservations or planes or trains or something. But what you didn't know is that they had set up what amounts to a variation of a contact center, where they were just serving up snippets of those conversations for humans to disambiguate and put back into the database. So there was always human involvement in creating a higher certainty that it was accurate in the responses it provided. And it was kind of seamless, or it remains, because they're still around and they do this. It remains the model, and over time, human intervention in that back end, those disambiguators and limit makers, are used less and less in the known use cases, but they're still good at doing stuff that's usually out of when a new problem comes along, humans get involved to sort of expedite how quickly it arrives at sort of understanding, oh, that's what that meant, and then answering. And
a German female professor found out in a study she undertook from the ethic point of view that it was quite worrying her that, for instance, a lot of the law enforcement supporting machines were trained by male judges.
Oh, yes.
So male judges will favor males and will favor them over women. Another issue was that a lot of the programming and a lot of the codes, such as in a complex program, which was done behind the scenes, there are only 10 lines, 40. You shoot up in sky, yeah? And I can use my rocket to make it visible, but then you have a real shitty situation. And another item is, again, there are more male programmers, unfortunately, than female programmers. And there we have a bias as well. So it was very interesting to see from a neutral perspective. And that was not too much hyped radio show where they simply in a German radio station here in the Rhine-Main area, HR1, they did some scientific programs where they said, yeah, artificial intelligence is a real cool thing. And they, for instance, explained to you how cyber threats are created, how banks are under attack, and what is happening in behind the scene.
Yeah. Well,
And
keep going. I don't
the programming stuff made me jump in and make me concerned, such as, what is your take on these challenges?
And so I need to unpack exactly what you were saying, Ralph. So one is the inherent bias in any model, and it's the programmer bias. And yes, I don't.
Programmer trainings data.
Right. I don't think it's adequately addressed right now. I can't defend how how things are being done. And once again, I'll hark back to what I know longer is it's been a problem with speech recognition systems that it's been known for many years they didn't understand women as well as men.
Ouch.
Well, my wife still won't use them. So all I can say is that once again, harking back to there's sort of the known knowns and the known unknowns. That is not an unknown unknown. That is a known deficiency that I think is being addressed, and that I think only. Hold on, I have to read this now.
Yeah, I'll just bring it up for the next one.
Oh, okay. Leave it up there till let me finish my Yeah, it is, you've articulated what is a known deficiency for a lot of these systems for many years, and it's on a vector to improve, but it only improves to the level that people like you and me and other sort of people that define the known problems that need to be addressed and should be addressed will indeed address them. So, there are existing biases. There are, entities and standards bodies and that are trying to see that we address them. And then, like you said, there's sort of people in the commercial realm that try to treat that as friction for adoption. But no, it needs to be addressed.
How far is it possible to address it? Because there are unknown unknowns in there as well. Plenty of them, actually.
Yeah. Well,
like Ralph, he said from a neutral perspective. This was a female researcher, so she had quite possibly a female bias.
Well, right. Well, philosophically, I don't think we can eliminate bias from these resources. So
honestly, I simply can make clear it was not a quote from a female activist like Alice
No, it's
Schwarzer.
not an
It
activist,
was
but no,
it was a knowledgeable female professor, which is
doesn't
in the
matter.
ethics commission, and she has, I would say, naturally, she can't release of having an own biased sense
Yeah,
on
that's
things.
what I say. That's what I
Yeah.
say. So it's far from neutral. So nobody is neutral because we all have a bias. So
At least we can be aware of our own bias, though.
yeah, and Marshall is good.
I am.
Doctor, PhD. Well, we had a CRMKonvo where we addressed the topic bias as well, and rubbish in, rubbish out as well. Yeah. So there's no way of getting totally around of bias, and there's no way of getting data clean. So the question is, well, that apparently has an impact, right? The output. Yeah. So still, we need to be able to technically, philosophically, ethically, but at the end of the day, technically, make it somehow happen. And what do you see as possible technical guardrails that could be put in place there, so that the output becomes good?
Right. I mean, it's still going to get down to pattern detection, I think, and like I said, I think there's not permanent employment, but there's employment opportunities in the foreseeable future, for ethicists to be among the curators of the responses that come from these AI infused resources, and that's not going to go away, and it's rightfully so, and there's the privacy issues as well, and there's the theft of creative work product that if somebody said provide an answer to this guy in the style of Ralph Korb, and it went through all of your stuff and just returned something that looked like something you wrote, that should, and this happens more in the the DALL-E, the generative art sort of thing. And actually today's sort of a interesting day because Adobe announced a product called Firefly, which is which is a natural language and AI infused set of resources around creative product that employs Adobe's resources. And one of the reasons it took Adobe this long to introduce it is that they've been bulletproofing it from well, for one thing, you'd love this for your webcast. You could go to the Adobe Firefly landing page and just sort of say, hey, I'm having Dan Miller on to talk about generative AI and this sort of stuff. Here's the time, and I'd like to do a promo in my the style that we've used historically, and it would come up with drafts of the promotional stuff. It could draft an email for you to approve and then blast out. It has a landing page for registration and all that, and it's yeah, and none right. And this is what John's saying. They have the rights, because they've been there forever for the imagery that they're using. And they've also set up a marketplace that if you say, oh, I want the art of so-and-so, or that looks like so-and-so, and so-and-so is involved in their creative cloud, they can do that only if there's the permission of that person. And they've created a do not train tag that goes on stuff that gets uploaded to the Adobe Creative Cloud. And in that case, that person's stuff or that particular artwork cannot be used in a training model. And so they're trying to tackle a lot. We're getting into the known stuff here.
Yeah.
They knew in advance that this was going to be a concern, and they'd seen the precursor ones. I start losing track of the names of these things that are getting sued by artists for for using their stuff to train a bot, a generative AI thing. So yes, there are programmatic constraints you can put on what's going to be rendered either as art or words, and we're just starting to see that, and it's happening.
Hopefully that will be a virtuous cycle where ethics build upon ethics and things become better over time. We can only hope.
I agree.
I just got an invitation today for Google Bard.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, which is, for those who don't know, basically generative AI for writing specifically, for blogging, packing lists, just all kinds of. It's another one of these things, which is we're talking about.
So Google,
and I'm interested to see how that one works out. Because as a writer and a lazy person, it really speaks to me. And I have to see if it's going to be, if it works well enough that it can get a general idea out, but leave enough room for proper personalization. If the AI gets good enough that it can write better than I can,
then it's bloody good.
I'm in trouble. His writing is about all I can do.
And probably 99% of the rest of us writers too.
Yeah.
But getting back to what Dan said a little earlier about the actual Adobe actually taking steps, which is something to really commend them on. How about making that a little meta? Do you see, in extension of John's point there, a possibility of having an AI to do the ethics checks, or do ethics checks for the upcoming AI?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, anything that we can conceive of, I think it can do faster and at greater scale. Like I said, if we regard it as tools, not a replacement for us, and Marshall, don't worry. Be happy.
Well, my biography was well written.
Yeah. My hope is that, as with everything else, it will be a useful tool.
Correct.
To improve what I can already do.
Right.
But there's that nervous little twerp in me that says, oh, goodness, what if this is going to make everyone as good a writer as I am?
Yeah.
Which in my head doesn't seem that hard, but I know that, okay, it's a talent.
But, and it came up here before, there'll always be little flaws or anything. I mean, even if you become the human editor of mini you, if you start thinking of this as your little robot friend, or Copilot has become sort of the metaphor right now. This is the thing that makes me superhuman. The machine is gonna do its thing, and it'll detect patterns, but it will always have flaws, and we will always have the role of nitpicking, I guess, or you're not gonna send out the work product of some other entity under your name without you at least having read it and approved it, and in that process you're going to find the things that you would have done differently or what have you. But maybe I think I'm in your boat. I think there's some things. I mean, I have 5 topics I'm supposed to write a blog about before the end of the week 2 weeks ago. So if I could just pick one of those and say, okay, you write that, and then and it writes it, I get to review it. We are creative entities. So, we'll do some synthesis, it'll do its thing, we'll do our thing. And yeah, I mean, I do think there is no turning back, is that we're living with the robots. We're going to not just regard them as tools. We're going to, we're in a funny way, and I don't remember who said this. It's redefined collaboration. Collaboration had, unfortunately during the lockdown, like collaboration platforms were, Zoom, Slack, blah, 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 anywhere that looked like Hollywood squares on a screen and a bunch of people on it. But now already, there's AI things listening and, tagging things and stuff.
Thank you, John.
Well,
there's one
see,
more.
See, there you go.
Okay, I can breathe again.
At least you.
At least me.
Yeah.
Though I will say it still gets back to one of my real concerns about the use of generative AI currently. It's not so much that it can create better content than a person can. It can create acceptable content much faster.
Mm-hmm.
And especially I know we agreed we weren't going to dive into politics today, but just in general terms, the fact that political documents and statements and, shall we say, propaganda can be pumped out at a much greater rate. And that is already someplace where people aren't necessarily checking facts. That is the part that really worries me. And maybe I shouldn't be bringing sky is falling shit into the discussion this late.
Right.
It's one that I can't really get away from.
Limit yourself to marketing. That is kind of the same thing.
Propaganda, marketing, advertising. We're going to get, perhaps barrage. Market-ganda. Wow.
Coined it here.
All
That's right.
Trademark.
That's mine.
But I'll tell you something that has been. You can take a word that you make up and it means something to you, and go to your favorite ChatGPT or Bard or whatever and say, hey, define this. Find the definition for me, and it will tell you what it means.
I made the hint to Matthias Hohensee, one of the US-based editors-in-chief of German's Business Week, who was diving into it. I put it in our preparation sheet. And he said, well, our jobs as journalists will change. And we will have more value in preparing our researches. We can save a lot of time in some bits and pieces, but at the end of the day, we just should be aware how the machines are either utilized or what we make out of it. Yeah. And that is an aspect I like very much.
Right. Yeah, we will collaborate with the machines, and initially we'll refine how to ask the right questions, what to prompt the machines with, so we get the results we want, and then we'll just have to see. It's kind of a what goes around comes around. Like when Opus Research, when we started studying what we called enterprise intelligent assistance. Everybody said, "Oh, you mean bots?" And I would say, "No, bots is a derogatory term, because at the time, there were spam bots, there were, all these things. So bots now chatbot and voice bot is not as derogatory as it is, but maybe, but its role is coming back to be sort of this malign thing, the Twitter bots, or, it's just that we won't know. Well, and actually we now it's really too late to open this, but it's just going to get harder and harder to know when when the thing you're communicating with, whether it's in a customer care setting or you're getting an email or something, or reading Twitter, is whether you're interacting with a bot or a person. So, when it manifests as, deep fakes
which brings us back to a point that Sri made a little earlier, which you wanted to read because I brought it up too early.
Oh yeah.
How do you see people change in a pattern, interacting or wanting to interact with a real human as opposed to a real artificial intelligence?
Yeah, and we haven't done the research. I will make these empiric observations. We haven't done survey work on this, but there's a generational difference for sure. And then there were some differences that came out during lockdown or pandemic when individuals were confronted with, hey, you can wait an hour and a half or something to talk to a person, or you can work with our chatbot here. And people were having success, and it's going to be success driven, but people were having success interacting with the chatbot, and the next time up they're fine. Whatever is most expeditious to finish a task. And what's cool about that is the people designing modern voice bot chatbots are redefining what success means, because it's revolving around task completion, not ability to direct you to the right person. Because back in the day, you do as much as you could. Back in the day, 2 years ago or whatever, you would do what you could to just sort of tell the automated thing that you want to talk to a person. But we're seeing less and less of that. We're seeing
they're making it difficult.
Yeah.
But isn't that rather a corporate strategy thing than a technology thing? This is kind of an I don't care about you customer attitude.
Oh no, that would have been the old thing. The precursor to artificial intelligence, which is just plain analytics. They're doing a better corporate, whatever, enterprise, whatever you want to call it. They capture the content of conversations between live people and live agents, between live people and chatbots, and they're discovering things like they detect sentiment. They do post calls. Well, rather they used to just do post call surveys saying how we do, and based on how we did, how would you recommend this to others? But now they're and then they finally say, hey, did we do what you asked us to do? But now they can take the corpus here is the content of the conversations. They can figure out which are successful and unsuccessful. They're finding out that you can design or automate those conversations between people and machines that are more likely to be successul, so that indeed you reach this happy path where it just doesn't matter. If they'll keep you in the let's say they know for a fact that it's going to be a complex topic. You're going to be populating something in a form. They no longer regard the length of the call, especially if it's with an automated thing, with lack of success. they're how far did you get in filling this out and getting done what you wanted to do becomes a criteria, and you can use machine learning to detect and define what is actually a success for the customer, and therefore sort of improve customer experience. So we're getting there.
We're getting there.
Am I being too optimistic, Marshall?
We are also getting there in
Yeah,
terms of
I mean,
time because
we're not doomed.
We're not doomed.
Seriously?
yeah, not
We're
yet.
gonna use the machine. We're gonna make them the tools. But go ahead, Thomas. What's up?
You're being exactly as I would hope you would be. You're
Yep.
using your considerable organic intelligence to help us digest the idea of artificial intelligence. And I don't think we could have done any better.
Wow.
Which
I'm getting a swelled head.
brings us to famous last words, which
And
is
I'm
the
sorry for the
usual way
banging
we
noise.
close our convos. Also in the appreciation of your time. Actually, today I have a twofold question. You earlier said something like conversational generative AI had its TikTok moment. Now, question like other hypes, will there be a Clubhouse moment? And if and if
Well done.
not, and if
Yeah.
not, what do you think is the next big step for generative AI?
Whoa.
Okay, more on its own.
Yeah. I'm not a next big step kind of guy. Everything's sort of incremental in my mind.
Okay.
No, incrementally, what to look for is, it's almost like what Adobe's doing, what Microsoft is trying to do with Copilot. That it's just ubiquitous, and it's it appears everywhere you go in the tools that you are using to accomplish what you're trying to do. So for Adobe, that was, hey, just take I need to do a webinar, and then it blasts out and said, oh, okay, we can write letters. I mean, we can write email promo, we can write the landing page, we can set all this up, we can do the artwork. So it's we're going to be on, we're entering this moment of sort of wonderful personal discovery of how individuals can use this in their everyday life. And okay, the flip side, the Clubhouse moment, and this is what I was talking to the Microsoft folks about when they were talking about Copilot, being on, every single thing in Office 365 is it's got to be better than Clippy, and
that bar is low,
I think
isn't it?
yes. But right. Well, you want to set a low bar to adoption. So if it appears everywhere and it actually does improve somebody's ability to be more productive, that's a little bit different than having something saying, "Oh, I see you're trying to write a business letter. Let me lay it out for you." No, this it's just a more elegant interweaving of. Call it conversational AI. Just call it AI in general at this point, but human AI at the human level. That's the next thing. That it's everywhere and it's invocable anywhere, and people succeed with it. There's my optimistic view.
Okay. Thanks a lot. I'll give John some last words as well.
Yeah.
This was.
I would have gone for the dog or the Merlin-like magician.
Oh yeah.
This was a hell of an hour.
Yeah.
This was
not a hell, but a heck of an hour.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Chaka! Yes.
Yeah, if you're not careful, we're going to have you back again or something.
It'd be cool.
Yeah.
It's transcendental.
Okay, accepted.
All right, keep in touch.
Okay, see you next time then.
Okay,
and thanks to everybody who was in particular, John. Your comments are, as usual, just great. We need to have you in the show live on stage again. And well, bye to everybody.
See
you next week.
Okay, thank you. Bye
going
bye.
backstage
Cheers.
now.